I like the idea of someone being like, boy, Brenda's really relaxed. I mean, she's not down in the locker room. She's up here getting popcorn. Wow.
Yep, just getting a Coke and some popcorn, in that game against Duke.
That was Brenda Frese, and this is On the Bench with Mike Hall. That's me. Brenda Frese is on top of her profession and has been for a while. She's the head women's basketball coach at Maryland, and in her 6 full seasons as a member of the Big Ten, she's won 5 league titles. Before the Terps left the ACC to join this conference, she brought them a national championship in 2006 by beating, in the title game, hated rival Duke. Her stat line includes 3 Final Fours, 12 conference titles, and 15 recruiting classes ranked in the top 10 nationally. Brenda grew up in Iowa, played college ball at Arizona, and she quickly rose in the coaching ranks, spending 2 years as the head coach at Ball State before Minnesota hired her. Frese turned around the Gopher program so impressively, she won National Coach of the Year, and that spring, after only 1 season in Minneapolis, Maryland Athletic Director Debbie Yow hired her. In 2008, she gave birth to twin sons, and this past summer, during quarantine, they taught her how to make TikTok videos. So to start off our chat, I asked her if nowadays she's more known for being the Terp head coach or for being a TikTok star.
At this point, probably the quarantine TikTok star. Although as I've gotten back to work, there's been lesser of it. So, but made some great memories during the quarantine with my twin boys. So, love always being caught up to speed.
They were good, and they got you into it, and I love that you're game for that stuff. You've always been, whether it's a social media thing or just dressing up for Halloween, like you're not too cool for school. I think it's a refreshing thing. I feel like there's too much of we need to be strict and proper. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's kind of what I want to embody, because I feel like there is a lot of pressure with kids nowadays to, do the right thing and be too cool. And I think when you can kind of, make fun of yourself and not be too serious, I think you can have a lot of fun.
What is your social media philosophy, not just as a mom of 2 young boys who are almost teenagers, but as a coach of 18 to 22-year-olds? Because I have a couple young kids myself, and I've talked to parents who are already terrified of the teenage years, that it's just going to be this every meal. The second they get a smartphone, they're locked out of your life, and it becomes social media everything, and worried about how perfect your image has to look. Like, that feels like a lot.
Yeah, I think it is. And you've got to be able to find the balance. I mean, specifically what you're talking about. I mean, I have twin boys that are 4 months away from being 13. And somehow we've managed that they don't have cell phones with data. So I feel like we're kind of one of the rare few. I mean, they do have the ability to get online with Wi-Fi, but that, I see some of that. I can't imagine if they had data, what it would look like. But I think, for me personally, I want, my social media game to be, kind of what I've heard from people is like, when they meet me in person is like, oh, wow, that's who you actually are. What we see, kind of where you're at, hopefully you're, down to earth and just so normal. And so I kind of, hope I project the image of who I am every single day and who people meet. So, wanting to portray that for my boys as well as our players.
Well, it's not just that you have a philosophy, but like, you're also frequent. You tweet a good amount. You're not someone who's like, once every 3 weeks sends something out that says, turtle power or something. Like you genuinely interact and post things.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think people, want to know what you're doing, but I also kind of want to have that balance where I don't want to be attached to it. I want to be present in my everyday life. I don't have an ego that I need to go live on different things. And, so it's really kind of finding that balance. To me is about sharing about my family, our program, our players, and anything else. And then, and then just keeping a healthy balance, I think is really important.
Let me ask you, what memorabilia do you have from the national title win?
Uh, Obviously, the net, the ring, from it, and some great pictures. I probably have more pictures at home than I do in my office, just because as years have evolved. I mean, we've been able to do some great things moving forward. That was a long time ago. So, not as much. I don't stay so much in the past as I do in the present.
So do you not think back on that moment often? Because I would think if I won a national title once a day, that would run through my brain.
No, not, I mean, until recently, during the quarantine when they played back the game, was the first time I had seen it in a very long time,
Really?
which was pretty cool to watch with, again, my boys who are at an age to kind of understand it more. I think I only got a half out of them, but it was great to kind of just relive it at that point. And we have the national championship trophy here in the arena, so it has a button that you push and it goes through the last shot with Tolliver's. So when I hear that button when I'm in the hallway, that's always a great reminder when we show recruits. But other than that, you're focused on this year and this team and what's out ahead of you.
How long did you let yourself enjoy it? Because we hear stories of, Nick Saban or whatever, the second the game ends, he runs to the locker room and is calling recruits after he's won a national title. And it's like, there's got to be some moment to just enjoy what just happened.
Yeah, I would say probably too long, because, it was the first one and I was a young coach. I mean, I was in my 30s back then. So, there was no manual or book on how to handle it. So, I mean, our team celebrated for quite a while, and it ultimately impacted us the next season. Knowing again, I would do it in a different way. That you do have that time. I think that you have to celebrate, and then the next where you got to move onto what's next. Within your season, but. At the same point, I mean, you only get so many shots in your career that I do. I couldn't be like Nick. I couldn't, turn it around and, the next day, be on to the next.
I think that's healthy. I think
right.
That's
right.
a good thing. You were young, though. I mean, you're barely in your 30s. Do the other coaches just hate you? And you won that? I mean, you were like 34.
Well, there were some challenges coming out of it, absolutely, because we kind of came out of nowhere. And, that was when I came here to Maryland in 2002. I mean, really to win it in 4 years, we must have done it dishonestly and, recruited illegally. So there were some definitely, it woke me up to the jealousies out there. But at the same point, I knew who we were and obviously, then learned like this is part of the territory.
Yeah. So that negativity, that sniping kind of quickly came right after the title win?
It really did. I think I was in a honeymoon bliss that, I thought, wow, everyone should love me and this program and what we did, which obviously if you're a Maryland fan, absolutely. But, not so much on the other front. I mean, it really hardened me and kind of grew me up faster than I realized when you're kind of thrown into the fire against, some really prestigious programs and coaches and coaches I had been friends with no longer, between the recruiting games. So some of that, that obviously stinks. But, I think you grow out of it and, kind of, for me, I've been able to kind of, no pun intended, harden my shell, through all of it.
Is it more likely to lose a friend in the coaching world on the recruiting trail or in a game?
I have found more times than not in recruiting. You spend so much time and hours, on the recruiting front and then what's being said. So I think the, recruiting front is probably harder.
Well, you're doing something right recruiting. I mean, you have top 10 classes nationally all the time. How would you synopsize your philosophy on recruiting?
Well, one, like you said, I think it's harder to stay on top than to get to the top. And, but I love recruiting. So, it's kind of the fabric of who I am. I mean, born and raised in the Midwest and, watching my parents with 6 children and still working at 88 and 81, which won't be the case for me, but I just think I love to develop those relationships and have that ownership. So I think, you're going to see me try to out recruit and outwork, every head coach that's out there. I'm going to be at your 8 o'clock games, and I'm going to be there, watching them warm up before that tip, and then be at the last game at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it's who I am. I could be watching a terrible game, but refuse to leave the gym because someone else might stand out for me. And I just want to have that ownership of, I've been really fortunate and blessed to coach some phenomenal players, but have put a lot of time into building those relationships.
Well, I talked to a couple of your phenomenal players about you as a recruiter, and there were a couple of main takeaways I had. One of them was they kept saying family atmosphere, that there's something about the way you run things, and especially the way you recruit, that's very caring and it feels very family oriented. But I thought it was interesting too. They both said something along the lines of, once you get into the program, you have an ability to put the players in an uncomfortable position so that they can be comfortable in an uncomfortable position. Do you know what they were talking about?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, like, you have to have the relationship established. So if you're going to push them, day in and day out in practice, the relationship has to be there first. Otherwise you can't push them. But, I'll give you an example, just from today's practice. Diamond Miller for us has made this incredible jump. It's fun to see. So, I just kind of dangle. I love to be motivational. I love to tap players, and she's killing practice, right? But the one thing that bothers me is she doesn't win every sprint in practice. She'll sometimes, take some sprints off. So, the challenge today was, like, how do you ever lose a sprint? You're the fastest, most athletic player we have on this team. How can anyone ever beat you in a sprint? Kyla Charles never lost in a sprint. It was personal. Like, the best of the best never lose. And I'll tell you what, she never lost a sprint today. And I've told our coaches, like, we're going to hold her accountable. And even if she makes the time and she's not first, we're going to run again. Like, it's just kind of finding those fine tuning, okay, what do I need to pick next, to bring the best out of each and every player.
Well, that's an old coaching adage, isn't it? The teams that really succeed are where the best player is also the hardest worker on the team.
Yeah, no question. And, I'm excited for Diamond. The jump that she's made has been unreal to be able to see. And, and that's where you talk about is just kind of, like, I love to kind of put my pulse on each and every player, through that motivating, whether it be practice or games. It's a lot of fun.
Speaking of jumps, you had some jumps in your career. We already talked about winning the national title when you were young, but you were barely a head coach, and then the Big Ten comes calling in Minnesota. You turned them around in a heartbeat in one season, and then Maryland comes calling. What do you remember about that time of the feelings of, geez, I just got here, and it's a good gig, but that's Maryland, and I got to take it. I mean, what was that like in your?
Well, like, first of all, I wouldn't recommend anyone to make 3 moves in 4 years. That was a whirlwind of when you talk about that path. But I've also always been a firm believer that when a door opens, you have to evaluate it and understand if it's best for you. So, Ball State was so uncanny because, when my first coaching job was at Kent State, it was in the league. So, I knew I was at Iowa State and we beat Connecticut in the round of the Sweet 16. And I knew when that job opened, I would have an incredible shot to get that job. So I obviously took it. And then my very first game was at Minnesota with Ball State as a head coach, my very first head coaching job.
And you beat them.
We beat them.
Yeah.
And like, they were through the softball, right? Like, oh, let's match ourselves up with Ball State. And so ultimately, after that win, that's kind of what set up for the AD there to come after me. So Minnesota made complete sense. It was 3.5 hours from where I grew up. When I coached at Iowa State as an assistant, I knew the program and the location really, really well. And then, Maryland was probably the biggest surprise. I wasn't, I thought when I went to Minnesota, that was going to be, probably it. And, when we had the biggest turnaround in the history of the game there. We went from 8-20 to 22-8. I was named AP Coach of the Year. All of a sudden, it was like Maryland came after me, Ohio State came after me, and Florida. So it was like, what to do. But, the timing was right with Maryland, Debbie Yow. I mean, it was pretty hilarious because, I had told someone I had done some recruiting in July on the East Coast back here in Maryland and DC. And one day made a wrong turn and went around the Beltway, which cost me about an hour. And I just remember telling, there is no way you could pay me $1 million I would ever coach on the East Coast. And here I'm going into year 19. So be careful what you say and understand, because, it just felt right with Debbie Yow and the timing with everything.
Well, I'm fascinated by that dynamic, because on the one hand, I'm thinking if you're the Minnesota AD, you're totally upset. On the other hand, it's obvious what's happening, that all these big programs are after you. Debbie Yow wants you. Like that must have been a fascinating conversation to have.
It was, and it was kind of like, I mean, I liken it to when I had the 3, different schools coming. It was like being recruited,
Right.
as a head coach. So you could feel these different programs. Obviously, you saw who did the best job recruiting me early. I mean, that was when their men's team went on to win a national championship in 2002. So Debbie Yow was going through a Final Four run with the men's basketball program and trying to hire her women's coach, and she signed me the night of their national championship game. So, we signed the deal. So, it was incredible, but I just kind of knew, through it, just the vision with Debbie. There was a new facility with Xfinity coming open, and I really felt like I could do even bigger things at Maryland with, on a national scale, win a national championship, get to a Final Four. But not to say it was easy. I mean, I had, Lindsay Whalen and Janelle McCarville that I was leaving. And I knew that team would have an opportunity to get to a Final Four. And they literally, the next, when I took the job at Maryland that year, they went to a Final Four. So I knew what I was giving up. I had to have the confidence to understand that I would eventually one day get to a Final Four. And, I've been so blessed to have been to 3 Final Fours, in that time, just to understand, I had to be a little bit more patient.
Give me your favorite Debbie Yow story to tell.
My favorite, I tell a lot of people this, is, my first year we went down to Duke and went down there and didn't have, a roster to compete with them. And Duke was rolling with Gail Gustin course. And we ended up losing by 52 points. And to be on the other side of that, is just, unreal. And so I was driving in the very next day into campus, and I remember, coming around, my phone rang, and it was her. And she said, Brenda, I know last night had to be the toughest you've ever had as a coach, which it was. I mean, I was doubting, why did I come to Maryland? And she said, just know and understand there will come a day when we will beat Duke. And sure enough, 4 years later, you're playing in the national championship game on the biggest stage to beat them in overtime. So it was the right time. I mean, I was so young. I mean, I needed a mentor like Debbie Yow. To this day, I mean, obviously we're still really good friends, but at that point in my career, I needed an AD like that was so supportive, was a women's basketball coach. And, I feel really fortunate to have had her in my life.
What a difference having an AD who has faith in you makes, right?
No question. My other story, she was at the birth of my twins. Like, she was the first one that after I delivered, I think her and her husband, Bill, were up within the hospital within the hour, like holding the babies. And, one they put a blue hat on. She had to go get, a different hat for the child. So
you didn't want blue.
yeah. She, it was fierce back then. It was a battle. So I can't say enough about the support.
Oh man, that's funny. She didn't want a blue hat. That's great.
So we got like a Christmas hat. It was red and white. It was like candy striper, but it was red. So everything was fine.
You mentioned when you were considering it, that Maryland was getting this new facility. And there's something I'm curious your opinion on. So I used to have these talks with Stephanie White and Vera Jones for years about the concept of arenas for women's basketball. And I feel like when I've talked to players and coaches, current or former, there's two thoughts. One is, of course, we want the exact same setup that the men have. Why shouldn't we? There's no reason not to. On the other hand, if we're going to have 5,000 fans at our game and they're great, but they're in a 15,000 seat arena, it hurts the experience for them. It makes it less attractive on TV. It might not be as intimate for the players. Where do you stand on something, on a topic like that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both. I think we've been fortunate here that we don't have very many games where we don't have, like, I mean, we're so fortunate with the fans that we have, because, when you're able to pack 10 or 15,000 in your arena and give them the experience. I mean, that was what I went through when I came out for my interview. It was the shell of Xfinity. And I remember standing up on top with a hard hat, looking down, and just had chills, that one day we would pack this arena, and we've been able to do that. And I think for our players, I mean, we make such a great game day experience that, it's been phenomenal between what you're able to do to give them that experience. And obviously this year it's not going to matter. So, when you talk about attendance, so, that experience that I think, when you talk about like what the music looks like, and, that kind of interaction is going to be really important from a marketing and a game experience.
Right. We talked about the fact that you had those 3 huge moves in a 4-year span, and then you've been locked down ever since you got to College Park. Except you haven't been locked down, because a few years ago, your world changes and you leave conferences. What do you remember about the first time hearing we're leaving the ACC and going to the Big Ten?
Devastation.
Yeah.
Because I left the Big Ten, to come to Maryland to play in the ACC. So, man, it was tough, and completely blindsided. I was told on a Friday and the announcement was made on a Monday. So really had no idea it was coming. I tell people all the time, and we always talk about be comfortable being uncomfortable, or being able to, I think you learn so much about being able to handle change. And I would tell you now, it's been the best move to ever make. I mean, and I say it on so many different fronts, but, both personally and professionally. I mean, obviously the move has been phenomenal in the conference, and, like we play in front of fans every single night, and the Big Ten Network, and, it doesn't even compare to what we left. So that in and of itself from a coaching end. And then just personally, I left Minnesota to go further away from my family. And now it's like, oh my goodness, I get to go back. We pull up the schedule as a family, and, my boys see their cousins, like I said, I have aging parents right now. So, the fact that I can see them 4, 5, 6 times, they're at the Big Ten tournament. What a gift that I could never have gotten through playing, coaching in the ACC. They were never able to do. So it's just, it's been phenomenal. And then I'll say it kind of recharged me like a coaching change. It's like, you didn't have to leave your school. I'm going into year 19, but all of a sudden, like, you had to learn all these new teams, like you changed schools. So it really kind of recharged me and re-energized me of like all these new scouts that season. Like I loved like learning about every new team that we were going to face in the Big Ten.
Huh. How long did it take for you to go from devastation to excited? Like, you seem clearly ecstatic about the move now, but the moment it hit you, it was so shocking and hard. Like, did it take a month? Did it take a year?
I mean, I moved through devastation, pretty quickly, I mean, obviously, once it was changed, it was changed. But, I'll say when the reality sunk in of like, what a great move is, when we went the next season and into the Big Ten, and we played our first Big Ten road game, I'll never forget, at Nebraska. And when I came back into the locker room at the end of the game, I probably had a thread of 50 text messages of the amount of people who had watched our game on television. It felt like the NCAAs when people watch us play and the text I receive. So at that point, it was like an aha moment for me. It was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, the Big Ten Network, I mean, I'm in all these households and all these people are watching us. And so that's where I understood the value was going into conference play.
Well, one of the things that I know, speaking on behalf of the network, that you do really well is give access. There are so many head coaches still that don't see what you see, what Tom Izzo sees, what literally great national champion winning head coaches see, which is you can benefit by letting cameras in your locker room, by doing an extra interview that you might want to do because it gives that exposure to your program. Why is it you grasp that so firmly and other coaches seem to be so against it sometimes?
Well, I'm okay. I'm so grateful that we get all this access when coaches don't want it to happen. But I think a couple things. My sister back in the day was a sports anchor. So she shared with me how frustrating it was when coaches wouldn't give access, you know, that they had a job equally as important and their job wasn't to make you look bad. Like their job was to get you this access. So she really taught me like at a really young age to understand the power of the media. And then exactly what you just said, Mike, is that, you know, I can't go out and speak to that many people on my own. I can't get into that many households, you know, so, you know, the social media piece is huge of how many, you know, households I can get into. But I think the final one is kind of back to what you were saying when you don't take yourself too seriously is, you know, I don't feel like, you know, anything I say in the locker room or in front of my team is anything different than any other coach. But I don't take myself as like, oh, am I going to say the right thing or the wrong thing? Like, this is what you get. And I want, you know, players, recruits, parents to understand, like, if you come to Maryland, this is who I am. This is what you're going to get. So that they really have the truth in front of them of what that looks like.
Your sister, who used to be a sportscaster, is that the one who looks an awful lot like you, or is that the other one?
It is. Okay. Yeah. So she's back in coaching again, and yeah, we're mistaken sometimes for twins, but you know, she you know, definitely you know, had gotten me to understand that early.
I have my aunt and my mom have always looked similar. And by the time I was like 4, they just said, forget it. Yep, I'm her. And would like take phone calls and take messages from other people and switch it around. Did you guys do that when you were younger? Like pull the old Parent Trap switcheroo?
Well, it's funny, you know, so, you know, today I woke up to a text message from someone who was sharing that they had pared down their list and they accidentally had my sister on the same text thread. The coach did. He got us mixed up, which was pretty funny. But my best story is the year when we when we won the national championship that she was obviously at the game and in the stands, and she went up to go use the restroom and go to the concession stand, and everyone kept saying, "Good luck, coach," and "Good luck the second half." Like I was around the concourse just getting some popcorn and going to use the restroom. So I love those times, even recruiting, when they think I'm sitting in a gym and it's her, you know, I can get some extra, you know, double bang out of it, you know.
Right.
So we definitely take advantage. Now she just kind of just, you know, goes with it. You know, she knows not to correct.
I like the idea of someone being like, boy, Brenda's really relaxed. I mean, she's not down in the locker room. She's up here getting popcorn. Wow.
Yep, just getting a Coke and some popcorn, you know, in that game against Duke.
You, one of the many things you're known for is the ability to motivate your players pretty well, whether it's a pregame speech or what have you. What motivates you if you need to get going? Is it a Pink song? Is it like, what is it that gets you going when you need it?
Different things. You know, I say that even in my speeches. Sometimes the night before I'll know what I want to say, and then, like you alluded to, a Pink song will turn me to a different way the day of. But I'm kind of like, I like things to be different. I listen to music, I work out, I podcast it, you know, listen to different things. So, you know, I get my inspiration, I think, from, you know, just different areas, you know, I think just trying to be as present as I can. So those different things kind of, you know, allow me to be aware of, you know, where I want to get those different motivation that it comes from.
Give me a couple podcasts that you're into. What are your go-tos?
Finding Mastery is Michael Gervais is a big one for me that I really go to. I also go to, some family ones. I bounce between, mental ones that I want, basketball, things for my family so I don't get too stale when I, work around the different ones. So, and then when I find other ones, he's probably my biggest go-to is, I really I listened to him today as I worked out.
Yeah. I think what you meant to say was On the Bench with Mike Hall is your favorite one. You left that out,
I'm
but
so sorry. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah. Right there. Top two.
We'll edit that back in, Brenda. It's fine.
For sure.
I won't take much longer of your time, but I do want to know before we get to the end of our segment here, the 2020 season, you guys were so good. I mean, you were on what, like a 17-game winning streak. You were the Big Ten champions. You're probably going to be a 1 seed. You were Final Four favorites. Like, how hard is it to know what could have been, and none of your players will get to know, and you won't get to know? I can't imagine what that feels like.
Yeah. It's tough because, there's only so many opportunities, when you have those Final Four type of teams, and what we grew into, was pretty incredible. So, I'm sad for the players and the coaches that have never had that experience, to be able to have it. But, then I think you could wire around, some teams had some tough losses to be the last game of their college career, and, like I, tried to let our seniors know is like, I mean, you got to walk off the court with confetti coming down, on your shoulders and hoisting that trophy. So, so many phenomenal things, that we can appreciate, what we were able to do. And, obviously, I mean, everybody's been impacted through this pandemic in one way or the other, I think, for us, it's a basketball game, but I mean, it's so much, it's been so much more serious about life. And, I think of poor, like elderly that are, grandparents that are in nursing homes that you're looking at through a window. And, we didn't get to play, basketball. So it's just putting it into perspective.
Right. That's healthy. It's a very appropriate way to understand going through this. Before we go, Brenda, we do before you go 4 questions that are unrelated to anything whatsoever. Number 1, give me the Big Ten head coach that would give you the toughest game one-on-one. I think I know where you'd go here because you might have used to coach her.
Oh yeah, right. I'm not matching up against Lindsay Whalen. No way, man. Like, maybe I'd be able to, I couldn't stop her. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go against Lindsay Whalen.
Next behind her, who would be the next best head coach?
Oh, I think, maybe if, you had some size maybe that you were going against. You know what? No, I'd have to go Carolyn Keeger because I know I watched those two growing up and they're young. So I'd have to go with Carolyn Keeger next.
By the way, what was it like coaching against Lindsay Whalen?
Surreal, strange, right? When you've coached her and now you're going against her. So, and at the same time, last year was tough because that was when we were really clicking on all cylinders and they were kind of going in a different direction. So we, it was kind of like that Duke game in my first season for her. So, that was a pretty tough game that going against, but she's doing great things. Has already gotten a lot of great commitments and, we'll turn that thing around in no time.
All right. Number 2, who were on the posters when you were growing up on your wall?
Oh, great question. Man, one of the big ones was, Jennifer Azzi. Man, like I couldn't get enough of her and Stanford and, the success that they had. And yeah, definitely Jennifer Azzi.
I was thinking more like, would there be a Michael Jackson or something, or like a singer, and they're like, no,
I
no,
was
no,
all basketball, man. I was
Stanford.
straight up basketball.
Number 3, loudest you've ever heard an arena in your life.
Boston, Christy Tolliver's shot. It went still to this day where she was coming off the screen, and it was the quietest I had ever heard of an arena. You could hear a pin drop to when she shot the 3 and the ball went through the net. The loudest I've ever heard in an arena. I mean, it was a memory I can still remember.
Probably the loudest you've ever screamed yourself, right?
No question.
Number 4, who have you not met in life that you would still like to meet?
Ooh. Dead or alive?
Alive.
Alive.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, you brought up Nick Saban before. I mean, I think we're opposite ends of the spectrum. So it would be interesting to kind of understand his wiring. I think of like just how aggressive he is. Just to understand what makes him tick. I still don't think my personality would match that, but just to understand it.
You don't think maybe you yell as much as he does at your players?
I might. Yeah, I might. Definitely.
I don't think so. I don't think you're quite there.
But I definitely think, I don't think I have the intensity. Like it would be interesting to me of like what keeps that fire in his belly, and that intensity.
Right. Well, Brenda, it was great to talk to a TikTok superstar, and so I appreciate you giving me the time and letting me learn some of the stuff on what makes you tick. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you having me.
So to recap, though she regretted the ACC to Big Ten move at first, it quickly became the best thing ever. She considers it surreal to coach against her former star, Lindsay Whalen. And be careful if you see Brenda out and about. Might not be her, might be her sister. My thanks to Brenda Frese for joining me. Heads up, our pal Alex Rue always has great stuff on his Take 10 podcast. Be sure to check that out. That'll do it for this episode. From the Big Ten Network in Chicago, I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next week.